Hi, it's Dr. Parikh, and today we're talking about the sections of a literature review paper. So how do you look at the different sections? You can find these under templates and examples. This is a very important page, and then you'll click on, sorry, my internet's a little slow right now. You'll click on literature review to find everything related to the literature review, which is what we're doing for the first half of the semester. And then you'll see this literature review paper. And you're going to use this for your whole paper, but even for the reference list, your title page, just save a version of this file and start as you do each piece. Just put it into that file. So later you don't have to copy and paste and have formatting issues. And you can click on it to download it. I already have it up just because my computer is a little overburdened at the moment with I'm recording and uploading and doing all sorts of things. So this is a Word document. And the beauty of this is the formatting is all set. So you've got your margins, you can click up in the running head, and you can really just kind of do what I do. So if you see this is all caps, you probably want to put all caps in. Side note, page numbers, especially on Macs, often get funky formatting, even in Word. They'll have a different font. Sometimes you'll see like spacing will be off, like this will be on a different thing for whatever reason. If you use Google Docs, your heading is almost always jacked up when you go back to Word. I don't know why. I can often tell by the mistakes what kind of software someone's using. And that's part of why I'm started to require Word. So you put your title, your name, the university. With APA style, you can put an author's note. I don't have you do it. It's just another thing to screw up. Don't bother with it. You go down, the abstract is on the next page, and everything that you see here pretty much is meaningful. Every spacing, every bolding, every capitalization has a meaning. So if I don't have abstract bolded, you shouldn't either. If I don't have it indented, you shouldn't either. And you can look through and you can see the abstract, and I describe to you, again, as much as I can, as if I'm just sitting next to you, talking to you. Same way I write my Christmas newsletter every year. And I tell you exactly what needs to go in each place. I tell you whether it needs quotations or citations. I tell you how long it should be. And so you can read each of these and really get a sense of what your paper needs to be for each section. We go section by section. You don't have to sit down and write your whole paper. The assignment this week is to write a title page. So literally download this file, change the running head, change your title, put your name there instead of Sarah J. Tedrick Parikh. And your title's probably going to change by the time you're done, especially by the time you design your own study for your research proposal. This is just a placeholder. It's a way to tell me what your topic is, actually. But it's also to get you to take baby steps into the lit review. The abstract is actually going to be one of the last things you do. And again, be detail-oriented. If you're not sure how the keywords are supposed to be, for one, do a Google search. Lots of people don't know how to do APA style. There are so many resources online. Or if you don't know, if you have extra spacing coming in after each paragraph break, which is really a common preset for Word, and you don't know how to take that out, just Google. Just tell Google what kind of computer you're using, what version of Word you're using, and often you can even find a video to help you. Also, for anything with formatting, Dr. Ling's video series, which you watch as part of the class, is a really great way to find out what you're supposed to do. You come down, now your paper, so you're on page 3, your paper's finally starting. You repeat the title, and you have what's called a roadmap paragraph. This is different from your abstract. It has a different purpose. And I try to make that clear here. So you can go through, you can see you need a thesis statement that's easy to find. You start off with something that builds interest. And I call it a roadmap paragraph because it should really match the layout of the rest of your paper. So down here we get to the section that starts literature review. Now we're in headings for the actual paper. Excuse me, they do get bold. You start with a background paragraph, something to get us sort of on the same footing. And you kind of pretend that the person you're talking to has probably taken like an introductory psychology course, like Gen Psych 1 or Gen Psych 2. but that they don't know a lot about your specific topic. So they'll know kind of like, assume that I have a basic understanding of what ADHD is, but if you're going to discuss specific symptoms, talk about those symptoms now. Talk about the symptoms of the disorder. If you're talking about teenagers, give me a little information about how ADHD tends to look in teenagers compared with other age groups. Whatever you're going to do it here. You need at least 2 citations. Don't use textbooks. I explain why. You may need to get one of them from like a book chapter or something, like a non-textbook book, or a different article. But at least one of them you should be able to get from the articles that you have. And it kind of funnels down. It starts broad and then it gets more specific to your topic. And then you're going to replace this heading with whatever you decide to call your first theme, 1 to 5 words. And these themes, these headings are signposts. They help me follow your argument. And it's tough because when you're writing, you have to be good at perspective taking. You know backwards and forwards what you're trying to say by the time your draft is done. You know the topic, you know the information, you know how you meant it. I don't know any of those things. Some of these topics, I genuinely don't know much about. And so I'm going to actually be confused if you don't lay things out clearly. This is another reason we do peer review. So you can see what it's like to read someone else's paper, and so you can have what's called a naive reader, someone who doesn't know your topic, go through. You'll do lots of little peer reviews with your reading group, but you'll also do a bigger peer review near a few of them. And those you'll be assigned to someone outside your reading group. And that's so you're getting a naive reader. You're getting a first look every time. For each paragraph, you have to cite at least 2 different sources. And for each theme, which is for most people going to be 2, maybe 3 paragraphs, you have to cite at least 3 sources total. Now, this is a lot of counting. It's a lot of, like, it feels kind of legalistic. I do this because I really want you to push yourself to integrate information. I don't want what's called a serial book report. I got that from Professor Farina too, where you talk about Article 1, and then you talk about Article 2, and then you talk about Article 3. And that's not very interesting to me. I've got your article notes already. What I want to see is how you can layer these ideas together. And that's hard, and it's scary. And so you're only going to do it if I force you to do it. So I require you to make sure you've mixed things up, and there's some assignments to help you do that. So you're going to want to do a check near the end to make sure that each paragraph and each theme meets the minimums for those citations. And then I have some that's just filler, so you get a sense of how long the paper should be roughly. There's no really strict limits for this paper. I care more about you getting things done. If I can tell from drafts that you're going absurdly long, I'll let you know that. Once I give you feedback on something, I expect you to listen to it for later drafts. Talk about how to keep going. This one's mostly filler because I've told you how to do themes. That finishes up the literature review part of the paper. Now, once we go to a research proposal, that actually gets relabeled as your introduction, and that's what it gets called. I know it's confusing, that they're kind of the same thing. The next section is the discussion section. Now, your research proposal is going to have a measures and a results, and then the discussion. In this case, we just jump to the discussion. You have 1 paragraph that is summarizing. Now, that feels ridiculous in this paper because you've written like 2 pages and now you need to summarize. But there's a few reasons. For one, as a reminder, it's way harder to follow this stuff when you're not the one writing it, when you haven't read the articles. You'll see that when you do your peer reviews. Another is, this is a training wheels paper. When you get to your later classes, you're going to be using 8 to 10 pages to discuss 8 references. So it's a much bigger paper. In the real world, when you submit things to journals, they're usually 20 to 30 pages like this. And so after 10 or 15 pages of a literature review, you do need a refresher on what the main points were. So we follow the structure as if it's a bigger paper, even though we know it's a training wheels paper. And so you're going to re-summarize your main points. Don't just, these overview paragraphs is what I call them. You write them off at the same point in the process with me, but they need to be distinct, and that's part of your grade is going to be whether it feels like they're doing slightly different things. You should not just copy and paste directly, but you should be following the same patterns and making sure that you're being consistent and saying the same things. It's tough. It's a skill. You'll get better at it. This one, if you mention something specific to one article, you will cite that. If you stay pretty broad, though, you may be okay without any citations. When in doubt, you can always cite. It's not a big deal. And, you know, if you are paraphrasing and you didn't cite, and I think you should, that's not something I'm going to report you for plagiarism. It's just not. It is plagiarism, but it's not the kind of plagiarism that I'm going to report, because I think now if I tell you to fix it and you don't fix it, I'll be pretty annoyed and I'll see where all I can take points away, but that's a different issue. Limitations. This is a subsection. So you can see these headings have a pattern. The ones in the middle are called level 1 headings. The ones over to the side are level 2. You can also have level 3, 4, and 5. Some of you might choose to do level 3 at some point, but you don't really need it for this paper. So limitations, you're going to critique your articles. You're going to say what they didn't do well. This is kind of general, but remember, for each of these sections, you're going to have an outline that walks you through exactly what to put in also. There's a ton of resources in this class to help you get what needs to go into the paper. And you'll get to do your outline, I'll give you feedback, and then you write your draft. So before you sit down to actually write, you will have already some sense of whether you're writing the correct things. Professional applications. This one is in many ways the toughest section for people to get their head around. Once you understand it, it's actually fairly easy to write. So you need to talk about how professionals, how people in the real world doing their job can apply information from specifically what you focused on to their job. So how I, as a clinician, as a psychologist who works with clients, I don't do that right now, but if I were, how could I, as a psychologist, do my job with my clients differently based on what you found? Sometimes students will kind of slip into just, okay, I talked about this one specific piece about depression, and so now I'm going to just say generally what are some good things for people, for psychologists to do with depressed clients. That's not what it is. I need you to think about, all right, I made this point. How would this point affect people in the real world? And this is often some of the most interesting things to do. Make sure you're focusing on someone who's doing their actual professional job. So it could be nurses, pediatricians, chaplains, marriage and family therapists, school social workers. I give you a lot of ideas of who it could be, but you're not going to say parents should do this, because you know what? You're writing this as if it's going to be published in an academic journal, and not a lot of parents are reading academic journals for fun. They might read magazines, but that's not the kind of article you're writing here. You're writing a journal article. And so you want to think, who might read a journal? Teachers read journals for teachers. Psychologists read journals for psychologists. So you can say what professionals should do. You can choose two different, you need to make 2 recommendations. So you need 3 limitations, 2 professional applications, 2 future research. So you could do both of your professional applications for the same profession, for different ones, it doesn't matter, as long as you make them clearly 2 separate recommendations. Future research, you pick 2 parts of your limitations, 2 of your limitations, and you say how it could be done in the future instead. When you're saying the limitations, you don't say what they should have done, you just say what they did. On the other hand, when you're doing future research, you don't say what they did wrong, you just say what future research can do. Avoid words like should. And then you have a conclusion. And I think I have an S there. I don't think there's supposed to be, but whatever. Which is your last, what I call an overview paragraph. Because you're doing a final wrap up, it's going to feel more like a closing. You're going to really hit the take home message. And then you get your references. When you do your references, one key, make sure that you use the link style. It used to be, the old style was to do lowercase, let me do it so you can see, Word hates this. Let me do lowercase DOI colon 10 dot. DOIs always start with 10 dot. It's a digital object identifier. And so it just means that it's like a permalink. And I don't know if, I think these are real. It's not real. But you can see how it looked for, is this one real? Nope, they're not. But it's going and looking through this DOI.org. If you can't find, if you ever need to look up a DOI, you go to crossref.org. I don't know why it's not just, I don't know. You go search metadata and you type in the title. So I'm just going to search college student bereavement. And I usually search the title and the first author. And I look through kind of the first page. And I look to see, and it'll have the DOI. It's also a good place if you need to find like the issue number, the page number, things like that. These are all fake references. It's just to kind of give you examples of how it's supposed to be. And you'll need 6 references for your first paper. That takes us all the way through the literature review. Let me go over to the draft papers now. So here, I'm going to go back to templates and examples. Here, I don't have my sample downloaded already, unfortunately. So I have 4 samples for this class. They're literature review papers that did very well. They got an A. Some of them got above 100%. They're not perfect, but you can see, you don't have to be perfect. I use a slightly different grading system now, so I may get fewer that are above 100%, but you can still see, I'll think about how to balance that out. I've taken the names away to protect the privacy of the students who said yes, you can use it. But as you look here, you can see, here's a mistake. The abstract is bolded. It's not supposed to be. So there's a few mistakes. Don't look at just one and use it as your, the one you work from. But if you look at 2 or 3, you should get a sense of what's going well. And you can read through. You can see it's not terribly long. And you can see examples of all parts of the paper, including the references. I don't really care if you make these live links with hyperlinks, as long as you use this HTTP. You actually don't even need to include the TX anymore. You can just do http://doi.org. I think that takes us through. So for this week, you'll read one of the sample papers. At least just pick whatever one sounds most interesting. And you'll discuss it with your group members. You should hear a little bit about all of the sample papers, hopefully. Thanks. Bye.